Right now I'm standing at the Pennsylvania Monument on the Gettysburg battlefield. And when you come to Gettysburg, this is the most prominent monument. It's the largest one here. The battle was fought on Pennsylvania soil, so naturally they get the largest monument. And I really like this one because you can look, and like here's the 39th Infantry of the 10th Reserve, and you can see the names of all of the people who fought here at the Battle of Gettysburg, and some who died, like Alonzo McCall. But one thing that we don't necessarily have here at the monument are the faces of these people, or information about their families or their lives. Well, there is a place here in Gettysburg where we can see both the faces of those who fought here and the ones who died here as well. Okay, so we have moved into town and are on historic Baltimore Street. And of course there is the Gettysburg Museum of History, a place that is very familiar to us. And I'm embarrassed to say that I have not yet had a chance to go into Ron Palm's Museum of Civil War Images, but Eric has had nothing but good things to say about this place, and I'm finally going to have an opportunity to go check this museum out today.
I want to introduce you to one of my favorite museums in the world. This is Ron Palm's Museum of Civil War Images, and he's my neighbor. He's right down the street from the Gettysburg Museum of History, and look at this place. I mean, it reminds me of walking into an old GAR hall. He has photographs and relics all over the place. It's a Civil War related museum, mostly Pennsylvania guys, but he has other items as well. I'm going to take you in here, and I want you to check this out. The way he has this laid out is he'll have individual showcases that have the Pennsylvania regiments. So just walking right into the front door here, he has 102nd Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry. And look at all these CDVs he has, all named of men from that regiment. And as I said, it's mostly Pennsylvania guys, but he does have some other really interesting items in here. And it's not just photography. He has flags, he has hats, he has uniform pieces, he has relics. And it's just amazing. And probably one of the most interesting things I find about this museum is how he has helped so many people find an image of their relative. I've had people come in the Gettysburg Museum of History looking for their great-great-grandfather who was at the Battle of Gettysburg. Of course, I always say check the Pennsylvania monument. If he was in a Pennsylvania regiment and fought at the Battle of Gettysburg, he's going to be on that monument out there. And if they know the regiment, they can look him up very easily. The other thing I say is go see Ron Palm. He may have a photograph of your relative. I can't tell you how many people I've sent down here and they were so happy because they didn't have any photograph of their relative, and they came back almost freaking out because he had a photograph of their relative. And it's happened a bunch of times. I've seen it happen, and then he just told me it's happened many more times for him. But he doesn't have everybody obviously, but he has a nice collection, and he actually has the best collection in the world of Pennsylvania images. So I highly recommend this museum. Check it out. It's a hidden gem in Gettysburg for sure.
Here in the museum, Ron has all of these images divided up into different regiments. So this one in particular is for the 85th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry. And so here you can see like Jacob Davis, and there's another image of Jacob Davis. Here's a Corporal Robert Mitchell. In some cases it tells information about where they were wounded or maybe where they were killed. So with history, we in the Civil War we don't have video, of course, so the closest we can get are images. So we can attach some faces with some names and really humanize this conflict a little bit more. Now, it isn't just images that they have here. There are also several amazing artifacts like this one right here. These are the remnants of the flag that was carried by the 85th Pennsylvania Volunteers, and then this spearhead or this flag topper here, this is phenomenal. Look at that. There is a mini ball that is embedded in the flag topper. Now the flag ended up being destroyed, like veterans cut it up and then took little remnants for themselves. Here is one piece of that flag that was recovered. It was found, just in a book that somebody put it in there as a little memento. And then here you can see a watch fob that somebody had created that kind of recreates this flag topper. But yeah, this is absolutely stunning. I've said before that walking into the Gettysburg Museum of History for the first time is kind of like getting figuratively punched in the face, just with the overwhelming amount of artifacts and things that he has in there. I have the same feeling coming into this museum for the first time, just seeing the volume of photos and artifacts and everything. This place really is amazing. Here we're looking at a display of photos from the 42nd Pennsylvania Volunteers, also known as the Bucktails. And take a look at this. So this man right here is Colonel Charles Fred Taylor. He was the colonel for the 42nd Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry, and he was killed here at Gettysburg on day 2 of the battle. And right here in this little jar is the bullet that he was struck with that ended his life.
The Pennsylvania Bucktails were sharpshooters that the inception started at early part of the war when Thomas Kane telegraphed Andrew Curtin. Andrew Curtin was the governor of Pennsylvania, the wartime governor, wanted to raise a regiment of men to send when Lincoln first called up his 90,000 men initially. Well, anyways, how they got their name Bucktails, it's kind of funny and cute. They were, after some officers went out and recruited men in northwestern part of PA, Warren, Elk, and Tioga counties, etc. They met at a place called the Bennett House, which is like a stagecoach stop, which is today it's called the GAR Highway, or US Route 6 that runs east and west. Well, at the Bennett House, one of the first men that signed up, his name was James Landrigan. And he signed, and other guys were behind him that were going to join. And Landrigan walks out of the front of the Bennett House, across the dirt road, there's a gutted deer hanging up. And he whacks the tail off, sticks it on his hat, and walks back into the, where the boys were signing. And some of the future officers, possibly Kane or whatever, said, "What's that in your hat?" He said, "That's a tail off a buck." He says, "That's what we're going to be called." That's how they got their name, Bucktails. So it's kind of comical, but that's when it started. And they were the original Bucktails, or the first Pennsylvania Rifles, and that's what they liked. Later on, about a year later, Governor Curtin wanted to raise Bucktail Brigade, which would be 3 regiments. So some of the officers from the original Bucktails went to different parts of the state and started doing this. The first that came back was the 149th Pennsylvania, and they had Bucktails in their hats. And this infuriated the original Bucktails. They called them fake Bucktails, bogus Bucktails, etc. But in 1904, they finally forgave them because at one of the meetings there says, "Our numbers are dwindling, so we should invite these boys." What's interesting, a lot of these men that fought in the original Bucktails, 149th, were from the same little cities and towns along the northwestern part of PA or the eastern part of PA.
One thing that I didn't mention in showing this CDV and bullet that is attached to Colonel Fred Taylor is that we also have a photo of the monument where he is buried. And then if we look down here, well, This is a picture of the veterans at the dedication of a memorial to Colonel Taylor, which you can find here on the battlefield. And then this is really, really neat. This is an original broadside calling for volunteers to the bucktails. This is one of two that is known to exist, and it's right here in this museum.
So this is a case that Ron has on the 149th Pennsylvania, one of the other bucktail regiments. And a while back, I got a book, and we plan on doing a video on this at some point. And it was given to Sally Myers, who was a local woman here who helped soldiers. She worked as a nurse, and one of the soldiers gave her a book and inscribed it. And he says, to Miss Sally Myers with gratitude or something to that effect. And it says, Sergeant Oscar Welch. So being that it was the 149th PA, I called up Ron and I said, do you have an image of this soldier? And he said, let me check. And sure enough, he did. So he made a nice copy of this for me. So this is Sergeant Oscar Welch, who gave his book, a little book that he must have had in his haversack or knapsack, to Sally Myers while he was being treated for wounds here at Gettysburg. And again, it just shows that Ron has so much stuff, and it's great that he can work with other people to try to provide images and help people out.
Right here, a few more images that are just cool as heck to me. Here's one guy from the 8th Missouri Regiment, and you can see he's kind of got a very unique pose going on there. Here's another interesting one that really jumped out at me. This is a guy from Company K of the 55th Pennsylvania Volunteers. He's in a hospital gown, and if you look, you can see blood seeping through the bandage on his foot, which again is really interesting. And I just can't get over all of these images. Okay, here we see one showing camp life. Here are a couple of guys with in some sort of camp scene with all of their equipment. We see some with some women in camp here. And then there were a few others that I wanted to point out. Oh yeah, this one here. So here is an officer with his dog. And then here we have another wounded officer here. But like you could you could spend hours in here just looking at all of these images. Okay, so walking through here, this place is amazing. This is one of the coolest museums in Gettysburg that I've seen. And something else that's really interesting is when you walk in here, you're not just walking into a museum, you're actually walking into one of the oldest homes in Gettysburg. So if you look right here, you can see the original exterior logs from the original home, and then they added onto it later in the 1800s. Ron was telling me that the tax records, the earliest tax records they have on this place go back to 1801. So yeah, very, very interesting. And yeah, take a look at this other artifact that I just saw. Now, as I've mentioned already, there aren't just images in this museum. They also have some really amazing artifacts. And one that really jumps out is this sword that we see here on the top. This belonged to a Captain Johnson who was in the 149th Pennsylvania in Company K. And this sword was captured on the steps of the seminary. So that is really incredible that they have this here.
People always ask what the first image I ever got, and this is it. Just a ambrotype of a halo eyes and such. And this started me on the journey back in probably 1975 or 1976 collecting. Bought it off a fellow in Pittsburgh named Mike Washner. And after that, I was in trouble. I loved collecting and honoring the soldiers in the museum, and this is what it's about. So I kept this. I even have the date on the back when I got it from Mike. Mike lives in Pittsburgh. He's one of my very, very dear friends.
As I've already mentioned, Ronn has a lot of these images divided up by the regiments, but this one is more of like the patriotic case. So a lot of the color bearers for these regiments, they took a lot of pride in carrying the flag and would want to get their picture taken with the colors. So here we see John Morton with the 79th Pennsylvania here holding the flag. Here's one that has been colorized. These are the remnants of the 82nd Pennsylvania's flag. And you just see all of these images from people, not just from Pennsylvania. Let me see. So there's Pennsylvania. All right, here's some remnants from the 4th Connecticut. Here's a guy from Massachusetts. Another one from Massachusetts. Here's one showing the tattered flag of the 4th New Hampshire. But yeah, all guys who were really proud of their service and their role in the war and the flag that they carried. My favorite spot on the Gettysburg battlefield is the wheat field, and Ronn has a few images in here that are connected with the wheat field. So the images that we are looking at right now are connected with a man named Robert Riddle. He started off in the 1st West Virginia Volunteers and then ended up joining the 140th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry. And take a look at this. He fought in the wheat field and was carrying this portfolio on him that day. He was the color bearer and got struck in the torso, and right here you can see the bullet hole through the portfolio. Here's another image of Robert Riddle, and he would survive that wound. A lot of times if you got hit in the torso, that was the end right there, but he survived his wound. And that portfolio that he was carrying that his bullet struck is right here on display in this museum. The image that we are looking at right now is for a guy named Captain William Thompson, who was in Company D of the 63rd Pennsylvania Volunteers. And Ronn not only has his image, but he also has some artifacts that were owned by Captain Thompson. So for example, we have his saddlebags here and his saddle blanket. These are the boots that belong to Captain Thompson. But the other things that he has are what really kind of make this kind of a heavy piece. This is the slouch hat that belonged to Captain William Thompson that he was wearing at the Battle of Chancellorsville when, as you can see right here, he was shot in the back of the head. And then this is the blood-stained vest that he was wearing on that day as well. But yeah, those are the items that are connected with this man. So we have the artifact, and we also have the face of the man who they belong to. Here are a few more artifacts here in Ronn's museum that are associated with the bucktails. So here's an original bucktail kepi from the 149th Pennsylvania Volunteers. We also have a badge here and a few more photos and another kepi. Here's a hat that belonged to a guy by the name of David Henry, and here we can also see a picture of him in his later years. And in addition to the photos and the artifacts, well, Ronn has also kind of shared his knowledge and his expertise in the form of some books. So here's one on the Bloody 85th. Here's one on the Pennsylvania bucktails, again with images that you're not going to see anywhere else. And then here's a third book, and he's working on another. So yeah, when you come here to the museum, you can definitely walk away with a little bit more knowledge than you came in with. All right, well that was simply amazing. It's not often that I get truly slack-jawed like that, but yeah, Ron Paul's Museum of Civil War Images, probably the best collection in the world, right here in Gettysburg. Again, just a few doors down from the Gettysburg Museum of History. So you can go to Eric's museum, and then you can just dodge a few doors down here to Ron's museum. It's free, but it'd be cooler if you left a donation. But yeah, definitely check this place out when you come to Gettysburg.